Yes. Shri Suresh Prabhu. You can speak, yes.
Thank you. Sir, when we were young, we used to think that defense expenditure as a part of the total government expenditure is causing distortions in terms of development priorities of the country. Because we used to think that a lot of money is getting diverted to defense. As a consequence of that, enough money is not available for rural development, for education, for healthcare, etc. But if you look at the figures now, while our GDP is growing at a very fast rate, we have already crossed $1 trillion mark, the percentage of defense expenditure as percent of GDP is falling year after year. It has already fallen to less than 2% now, and therefore it's a matter of serious concern that on one hand, all our borders are becoming very insecure, the threat perception is rising, the dimension of threat is changing, and seriousness of it is not felt in terms of capturing it in increasing the defense expenditure that is really required, commensurate with this perception. And therefore, this is a very serious matter that on one hand, we realize that we have to have more people looking after our armed forces. We realize that we need more equipment to look after it, but on the other hand, we are actually trying to lose a lot of it. Sir, just not expenditure is good enough to determine to what extent we are actually investing in our armed forces. What is really required is the quality of that expenditure. If you are incurring expenditure for betterment of the people, not for modernizing it, I can understand. But if you just incur the expenditure just to justify that I am incurring the expenditure, it's not a good point to score. So I would think in the over a period of time, we thought that the army will protect land, the sea will be protected by the navy, and the air, of course, will be protected by air force. But the threat perception, as I said, is changing so dramatically that we really need to make sure that not just confine defense priorities, preoccupation of our thinking only to these three limited areas, but we should go beyond it. Sir, let me deal with defense equipment. Sir, this is something which should be really ashamed of, that on one hand, all the time we talk about India going to become a superpower. Now, whether we become superpower or something, only time will prove. But today, we want to be superpower, and if we are going to be one, who is going to protect that superpower status? All the imported equipment that we are going to buy from all over the world. Can we become a superpower with imported equipment to protect our defense forces? So, sir, the most important thing that we really need to look into is how do we make sure that we modernize our defense factories, not so that they can acquire more just technical know-how, but how we can use the know-how domestically as well as from outside India to make equipments in India. And rather than becoming a net importer of defense equipment, why should we not become an exporter of defense equipment? So today, we are using whatever our limited defense budget to support the economies of other countries of the world. When we import defense equipment, this is what we are actually doing. So every time we see that a president of any country or a prime minister of another country visiting India, he is always accompanied by companies who sell defense equipment. So nowadays we see more of them coming to India. I sometimes wonder whether they are coming here as a representative of the vendors or they are actually trying to come here to help our strategic need. So my request to Defense Minister would be that we must make sure that our modernization of defense equipment portfolio takes place in a manner that we do not depend on imported equipments to maintain our borders. Sir, in 1958, exactly 50 years ago, we created DRDO. We are proud of their record in many ways. They have done a good job. But I think this is the time, 50 years, not short time. So whatever learning curve was there, it is already completed. Now I think the DRDO should really try to compete with the best defense organizations of the world in terms of research and development. And that should be done so that we should benchmark what new equipment they are going to make, what new technology they are going to develop with the best available in the world today. So my request to the Defense Minister would be, please create this benchmark-related aspirations for the DRDO, which should really be able to meet our future challenges in domestic production and not just to depend on imported material. So other issue is, always it plagues the Defense Ministry, that all Defense Ministers are shy of buying, because if you don't buy, it's good, because if you buy, it's a controversial issue. So my request to my Mr. A.K. Anthony would be please come out with a procedure which will facilitate early disposal of all these issues. At the same time, we'll be able to procure, but will not be shrouded by secrecy, not be shrouded with controversy. So therefore, I would request him to do that. Sir, the other very important issue other than equipment is the people itself. So our intake is falling dramatically. People are just leaving army on our various armed forces. Even Air Force pilots want to join the jet or other private commercial airline. So sir, my request is, we must strengthen our catchment from where we get the new recruits into the armed forces. The Sainik School, the NCC, should really be modernized and should be made in such a way that these institutions are able to actually work as catchment institutions to get more people, and also we must sensitize people. So we must bring some sort of a glamour to these armed forces so that people will be attracted to go there. So today, private sector is offering such incentive that it is impossible for army to compete with that. So if we can really bring in this type of a new glamour around these forces, and for that, my request is, please use mass media to create this glamorous attitude towards
Please conclude
sir,
now.
Sir, I'm the only speaker from the party, sir. I just started, sir. I'm not a second one. I'm the only speaker, sir. So please, sir. Sir, I'm the first one for the party and the last
टाइम
one.
नहीं, पार्टी टाइम तो सबका खत्म हो गया, अब दोबारा देना है.
Sir, my request, sir. Sir, people, when we talk about, I would request, last few years, we have seen a huge outflux of people going away from army. So therefore, we really need to make sure that we provide them incentive rather than just keep on recruiting new people, train them, and they will lose them to private sector. So rather than that, how to retain them should also be a challenge. Not just to get more, but how to retain them is also a challenge which we should try to do. And also at the same time, in army there is a peculiarity that at some age we would like people to leave army because we want young blood to come in. And that's a very sensible thing. But when people, we want them to leave, it's a responsibility of all the armed forces to give them enough training in a manner that they will acquire such skills which will help them to carry on life outside army without wearing uniform. And that's what we should really try to do it. Sir, morale of army, all the armed forces, is something which is an extremely important issue. I think we must make sure that we keep it at a high level, and to do that, we must provide proper promotions, rewards in a manner that whatever the army, and we are all proud of them, whatever the armed forces have done, they should be able to do a much better
Please
job.
conclude
And
now.
we should not use them at random for any civilian disorder that takes place in India. So that should be used in a very exceptional basis. Sir, my two last points. One is on intelligence. Sir, I think we really need to strengthen our intelligence base of the armed forces in a very significant way. And now the dimension of threat, as I said, and the perception of it is changing so dramatically that the challenge before the armed forces is they should get advanced information before others act. We should be able to know who is going to act, and so that we can act before them. And if you want to do that, we really need to strengthen it, and for that we really need to bring in a lot of synergies between our various intelligence institutions, and that's what we really need to do. So we need more technology, but at the same time, we also need more human capital to make this happen. I hope we do that. And so my last point is, I would request Mr. Anthony, the Minister, for one very specific thing. Sir, we need a strategic thinking on many of these issues. Now, I know, as often happens, that government is not necessarily the best place where the original ideas emanate, anywhere in the world, because governments by definition are busy in doing so many things. So we must encourage formation of more think tanks in India. The think tanks, we should be supported by the government, who will offer them ideas, who will be a sounding board for some of the ideas that government will like them to apply. And I think this is what we should try to do. And if this is done, I think we'll be able to really do a greater service to the armed forces.
Thank you. Shri Avinash.